Hey, it's cooking vlog day. Today I'm making literally a family tradition, which I probably made a few of those already, but usually I change them up a little bit and kind of add my own twist to it. No, not today. Today this is Nanny's famous string beans and potatoes. I have absolutely no idea where this recipe came from, or I should say why she came up with this recipe. I know that it was Nanny's recipe, I just don't really know why she came up with this recipe. So this is what I surmised up until this point. I figured that a long time ago, they were poor, and so it was cheap to make string beans and potatoes, and I guarantee you that's where it came from. I'm going to ask my mother that question, by the way. So let's talk about what we use to make string beans and potatoes. 2 onions, about 4 or 5 cloves of garlic, of course a couple of our dried red hot chili peppers. Joey G's daddy buys them for me. And come on, do you need to ask my secret ingredient? You know it's collagen. You know it is collagen. Heat the EVOO up in the pot. Add your 2 chopped onions and your 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. And then you're just going to saute it until it's transparent. Make sure you don't burn your garlic. At this point, you can also put in your fresh red hot chili peppers. Crush them up. I took some of the seeds out, so one of the peppers I took the seeds out. The other, you'll see, I left the seeds in. The seeds are where the heat comes from, so I left it in and it wouldn't be too hot, but yet just give a little bit of a taste. Some salt. And I always use, you notice I always use these instead of a regular salt shaker. I just find like I have more control over how much salt goes into my dishes when I put it in with my hands. I don't know. I saw Rachel Ray do that all her life. She throws it over the shoulder. Me, I don't want to have to vacuum it up. So I don't throw it over the shoulder for good luck. I just put it in and leave it that way. And I buy the kosher salt. So now you're going to saute your onions and your garlic. I have already chopped up my potatoes. After this gets a little bit softer, I'm going to add in the potatoes. While that's cooking, I am going to steam my string beans. Now, typically I'll go out, I know I said this is probably a cheap recipe and that's why she did it, but here I am buying the prepackaged, washed and trimmed string beans, which are definitely not cheap. I have to say they weren't cheap. But believe it or not, I went to Stop and Shop, and this was literally the only way that they sold string beans. I have no idea why. I never noticed that before. And typically I go to ShopRite. So Stop and Shop needs to step up its game and get more fresh vegetables, because I like to hand pick my string beans, and I spend like 5 hours trying to pick them and put just the right ones in the bag that I want, make sure they're not yucky and all that. Well, this time they're already taken care of for me. And that was what I had, so that's what I used. Okay, so these are going to steam. You want to steam them so that they're al dente. You don't want to make them real soft. But while your potatoes are cooking, you're going to steam. And I just put a steamer basket inside of my pot. And that's how I do that. Now these are starting to get soft and transparent. And I'm going to put my potatoes in. Now there's about, I'd say about 8 or 9. One of these potatoes was like huge, it was gigantic. So I would count that as 2. Then I would say about 9 potatoes. But I don't put a whole bag of potatoes in. I put maybe a little bit more than a half a bag of potatoes. So if it's a 5-pound bag, maybe you're putting in 3 pounds of potatoes. But again, that's a guesstimate. Now why I put this in just like this is because I really like to have the flavor of the garlic and oil and the hot pepper, the salt, all of that. When you cook it in here for a few minutes before you put in your liquid to soften your potatoes, there's something about the way that the flavors stick to the potato before you do that. I do that with really everything, even when I make my pasta with broccoli. I put my garlic and oil in, and then I put my broccoli in before I even put the liquid, so that I get the flavor of the garlic and oil in there. Okay, so this is going to saute for a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Then afterwards, I'll come back, I'll add the liquid, show you what I do from there, and then we'll catch up. Be right back. Okay, so the potatoes are getting nice and starchy. You start to see a little bit of a sheen come over the potatoes. Come on over, I'll show you what it looks like. They're not soft, obviously, yet, but they're just where you can notice completely that the flavors are combined. Now I'll add in my chicken broth. Why don't you stay here and I can show you how the potatoes need to be covered. What you want to do is you want to cover the potatoes so that they're not completely, you know, maybe like an inch above the potatoes with water. Now, of course, I'm using collagen. But you don't want to make it so that the whole pot, in other words, is filled. I think 2 of these containers is probably plenty. They're 32 ounces each. And you'll need a little bit. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that was a guesstimate. Okay, so next step is after the potatoes are in and after the collagen is in, you're going to bring that to the boil, and you're just going to get your potatoes soft just like you would too if you were making mashed potatoes. So I'm going to leave this here. It'll probably take about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll come back. Okay, the potatoes are soft. I test them basically by sticking a fork in them. And when they fall apart, I know they're ready. And our string beans are all steamed. We drain them. And we put them right in with the potatoes and all the juices. I absolutely love making stuff like this when it's a rainy day. It's one of those really dreary, rainy, drizzly days all day today. As you can see, it's one of those days I didn't want to get dressed. What better day to not get dressed than to wear my not-so-soccer mom sweatshirt? Go to the website and get yours. Isn't it cute? It's like a little like flash dancey style, but I have to tell you, it's so comfortable, and I'm not just saying that because it's ours. It really is comfortable. I love it. So you mix your potatoes up, add a little bit more salt, and if you'd like, you can add a little bit of pepper. I love fresh ground pepper. I use it for everything. I don't even know the last time I bought regular pepper and filled my pepper shaker anymore. And I buy these big ones at Costco, which is even better because they're pretty cheap, pretty inexpensive. So I'm going to mix it all together. It's going to cook for another, say, 25 minutes or so, just to combine all the flavors. And the potatoes, the starchiness will get real thick from the potatoes. And it makes like almost like a stew consistency, but it is so delicious. String beans and potatoes. This is what it looks like after you let it simmer. Now, I will tell you, the longer you let it simmer, the more it'll soak up the juices. So if you like it more of a liquidy, juicy kind of a dish, leave it, let it simmer maybe 15-20 minutes. You'll still get all the flavor. The longer you let it simmer, the more goopy the potatoes get and broken apart that they get. Add about a handful or 2 of fresh grated Parmesan cheese. I buy it from the deli already grated, but it's grated fresh there. Then you'll mix that right into it. And typically I'll serve it with a loaf of Italian bread. Nanny always had a loaf of Italian bread. I just happen to have leftover stromboli in the freezer. So here I have just some leftover stromboli. We'll serve a piece on the side with some string beans and potatoes. This is truly a great vegetarian dish. So if you love vegetables and if you're a vegetarian, great dish. String beans, potatoes, garlic, onions, chicken broth, grated cheese. You really can't go wrong. It's one of those healthy comfort food kinds of dishes. Like Nanny always said, it was a good healthy meal. So here's our string beans and potatoes. Here's your stromboli. I know you're going to love it. Make sure you're listening to The Ordinary and Extraordinary on NotSoSoccerMomRadio.com. Check out our swag in our boutique. Love for you to purchase something. Send me a picture of you wearing some of our Not So Soccer Mom Radio stuff. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day.